morning, honors, anatomy, and physiology. We are here today to talk about how the kidneys affect your blood pressure and your electrolyte balance using hormones and other methods to increase your blood pressure in your kidneys. Now, to recap blood pressure, I want to jump back to our cardiovascular unit. Your kidneys and your heart are in this constant sort of battle dealing with blood pressure. So this was on Plan Book, and if you haven't done it yet, I want you to pause this video and go watch the TED Ed video about blood pressure. It's only 4 minutes. It'll refresh your memory on peripheral resistance and what is happening with the heart and the blood vessels when we talk about increased blood pressure or even decreased blood pressure, so that these things with the kidneys will make a little bit more sense. So pause and go ahead and do that now if you haven't already. All right, so this is not in your notes for this unit, but this is a picture of my notes from back when we did our cardiovascular unit. In fact, I've got like my little heart diagram and all that stuff sitting right here. So what I wanted to point out, this stuff is not on your test, but I wanted to remind you when we talk about blood pressure, it's kind of this chemical formula or chemical balance. So remember, blood pressure was your cardiac output times the peripheral resistance. So how much maybe blockage or how constricted or tight those arteries are in your body. There could be, a thrombosis or some kind of blockage, atherosclerosis that's causing buildup and plaque in those arteries. We call that peripheral resistance. But also a big thing is vasodilation, which would be those blood vessels getting bigger, and vasoconstriction, those blood vessels getting smaller and tighter. So that's a part of peripheral resistance too. And we'll see that kidneys play a role on that peripheral resistance in our cardiovascular unit. And then cardiac output is just what your heart is doing. How much blood volume does it have and how often is it beating, beats per minute and all that. But peripheral resistance, remember, is key in determining your blood pressure, your BP. Okay, so I just wanted to recap that. You didn't have to write any of that stuff down, but just as a quick review. This picture is not in your notes either, but we're zooming in here on the Bowman's capsule and our glomerulus. We haven't talked about this in super detail, but here are those capillaries that this is where filtration occurs and blood is being forced out. Well, I shouldn't say blood. Basically, blood plasma minus proteins is being forced out of this. But one thing I'm going to mention today is called the juxtaglomerular cells. And that prefix juxta just means next to. So these are cells that are next to the glomerulus, and that's exactly what they are. They sit right here in this little nook between my afferent arteriole and my efferent arteriole. And so that's where that name, the juxtaglomerular cells. These guys are placed right here at this point where blood pressure in your kidneys is super duper important, because we need to have high blood pressure coming in and a little bit of a lower blood pressure coming out to force that filtrate out of this. So these cells are positioned right here to basically make sure that blood pressure is high enough to filtrate in our kidneys. And our kidneys kind of are at odds with our heart. Our heart doesn't want to work much harder to beat faster and harder, but it does, the kidneys want high enough blood pressure so that filtrate can get through. So the hormones secreted by the heart versus the kidneys sometimes are at odds with each other in order to make sure this happens. So when I talk about the juxtaglomerular cells, it just means they're right next to the glomerulus. All right, so this is in your notes packet, page 6. And if you notice, we're getting almost done filling this out. Your test will be Tuesday next week. That's Tuesday, May 12th. And I'll talk more to you guys later about the end of the year schedule coming up soon for you. Okay, actually here, before I jump into this, what I would recommend is using 3 different colored utensils, or 4 if you want to include the red on here, for this flow chart. Penny is snoring really bad, you guys. All right. So the what I would use different colors for is, you can see that we kind of have this blue flow chart, this beige, and this purple, and they are representing different things. Okay. So the RAS system, I mentioned this ever so briefly before when we did some hormones. It stands for the renin-angiotensin II system. It's basically all of the hormones that are involved in this, and we'll go through that. Those are all in green. You could even just outline the boxes in green and kind of fill your key in if you wanted to, or use a highlighter or whatever. The sympathetic nervous system, the sympathetic nervous system. So this is what the brain controls over here. And then ADH, our antidiuretic hormone, has its own system of controlling. And if you can remember this little structure here, that's my pituitary gland. And so ADH is secreted by the pituitary gland. And so it's kind of in a different part of the body. So there's basically, 3 different things that control blood pressure, especially in and for our kidneys, to raise the blood pressure when it's dropped too low so that filtration can happen. So these are the 3 different systems that come into play and sort of interact with each other. So your kidneys, to be honest, don't care very much about high blood pressure. Your heart cares about high blood pressure, but your kidneys like having higher blood pressure because it means that they can filter out more stuff through their glomeralis. So what is only really controlled by your kidneys is if your blood pressure falls. So that's here at the top. If you wanted to do that in red, that's like the warning sign from your body telling your kidneys, we don't want to go into kidney failure. We want to make sure and filter everything we can. So let's raise our blood pressure. So you can see here the ultimate goal, these 2 boxes in red, is to increase our blood volume, which is going to raise our blood pressure. So remember, to raise your blood pressure, think of a hose. Okay, ways that I can increase the output of my hose. I could turn up the hose, right? More water flowing through is going to increase the pressure. I can also put my finger over the opening and constrict my hose, and that's going to also increase the pressure of water coming out of my hose. And so your arteries are very, very similar to that. All right, so if my blood pressure falls, okay, in my RAAS system, I have reduced filtrate. My kidneys don't like that. I want to filter out as much as possible. So the first thing that happens is that, for short, JGA, that's the juxtaglomerular apparatus, those little cells stuck right in there next to the glomeralis. Those guys are going to say, we're not filtering out as much. We are going to release our special hormone called renin. And renin's job is to, if you remember back from hormones, increase our blood pressure. So what renin does, though, and this is where the RAAS gets its name, renin is going to tell angiotensin II, another hormone, to kick in. So it's sort of this cascade effect, like many of our hormones from the endocrine system. This hormone is stimulating this hormone to stimulate another. So that's what's happening here. Renin is going to stimulate angiotensin II, and we're going to go through this. But also look at this little arrow. Right? It's going to come up here and also affect another hormone as well. So this is why it's called a system. Our AAS system is renin, angiotensin II, ADH, antidiuretic hormone, because renin sends out this message to say, like, everyone that raises blood pressure, release your hormones so we can bump this pressure up because our filtrate just dropped down. So we're going to increase blood pressure. Angiotensin II, let's go through this. So it has quite a few effects. It's going to tell my arterioles, my systemic arterioles, meaning the whole system, my entire body. It's going to cause them to vasoconstrict. So I'm putting my finger over my garden hose. I'm going to decrease the volume in which those substances are going to move through. And so that's going to cause a increase in peripheral resistance. And if you can remember from our formula, if I increase peripheral resistance, blood pressure will increase. If you remember, that formula was really simple. It's basically if something goes up, blood pressure goes up. Something goes down, blood pressure goes down. I'm trying to raise blood pressure. So basically everything I'm doing here is going to also go up. Okay, so peripheral resistance will directly rise my blood pressure, and that's everywhere. So angiotensin 2 tells all of my arteries, not just in my kidneys, but my whole body, to constrict, and so my blood pressure will go up. The second thing that it does is it stimulates the adrenal cortex, which is going to release another hormone, aldosterone. And we labeled on our last picture that aldosterone, we drew it on our little thing. Excuse me. Sorry. Aldosterone is going to affect the distal collecting tube in our kidneys. And when the distal collecting tube is affected, it is going to tell your body to reabsorb sodium. And this was on the homework assignment from yesterday. And the video I wanted you to watch from Crash Course is that anytime you put salt somewhere, water tends to follow it, okay? Because water likes to balance things out. And salt is basically draws out water from anything. And your kidneys know this. So if I want to draw water out, and more into my bloodstream, I want to take it out of my tubules and back into the blood, because I want to open up my faucet more, right, on my blood pressure to increase blood pressure. Sodium leaves the collecting tubules, goes back into the blood, and water will follow it. So water always follows salt. Just think of that as just a regular fact, right, about body and about the kidneys. So water is going to follow salt. So what aldosterone does is it tells that collecting tubule to increase the reabsorption of salt into my bloodstream, and naturally water will passively just follow it because of osmoregulation, okay, osmosis. Because I have now more water in my bloodstream, I am going to increase my blood volume, and that's going to increase my blood pressure. Again, this goes up, this goes up, this goes up, okay? So water follows salt into my bloodstream, and that's what aldosterone does. And again, all of this was the RAS system, okay? Renin is stimulating angiotensin 2, a hormone, to do all of these things, which is all increasing blood pressure. All right. Now, okay, moving over to a new little flow here. We have these baroreceptors inside of my brain that are also registering what my blood pressure is doing. So that's part of my sympathetic nervous system. So the fight or flight part of things. So if that thing turns on, okay, I'm going to say like, oops, I'm in a dire situation. I am going to vasoconstrict, okay, increase pressure, and that is going to increase my peripheral resistance. And if this goes up, this goes up. So increased peripheral resistance, increased blood pressure. That's going to raise my blood pressure as well. Part of my brain is causing that to happen as well because of a drop, okay, through the baroreceptors, which are inside your brain. Sympathetic nervous system. So this is like my body's amping up for something, right? I'm going to increase, like, you got startled or you're stressed, okay? That can cause that as well. All right. And then the third thing that will turn on if I have a falling blood pressure is my hypothalamus and the pituitary gland. So it's the posterior pituitary that releases ADH, antidiuretic hormone. And this should be associated with water, okay? This is why if you're drinking alcohol, it inhibits this and you end up urinating out a lot of water, and that's going to actually cause a decrease in your blood pressure. So ADH is going to, instead of being on the DCT, remember this one affects the collecting ducts. We wrote ADH in on our little flow chart of what all is happening in your nephron. So ADH affects the collecting ducts, the tube at the very, very end of my nephron. And what it tells it to do is to reabsorb water. And this is where it might, it's just going to soak up. It's the last ditch effort to soak up more water. Again, more water, more blood volume, raising blood pressure. So this goes up, this goes up, this goes up. Okay. And so that's going to increase my blood volume and increase my blood pressure. Your kidneys like high blood pressure. Heart, maybe not so much. It makes it work harder. But your kidneys need to filter. And so all of these things are in place to stimulate an increase in blood pressure. Can you guys hear her? There's a pen sitting on top of her. So the RAAS system, I want you to kind of follow this flow. Renin stimulates angiotensin 2, which does quite a few things. It will stimulate the adrenal cortex to release aldosterone. It also, follow this arrow, is going to stimulate the posterior pituitary to release antidiuretic hormone. So it's this huge cascade effect, this whole system. Everything, the grand finale is to raise blood pressure. Okay. And that's the RAAS system in a nutshell. That's it for today. I hope you guys enjoy this kind of rainy, cold day today. I got like my nice little warm clothes on. Gonna stay inside. It'll be nice. All right. I hope you guys have a good one, and I will see you soon. All right. Snoring Penny.